she gets woken up. The 6 small grays walk in, part ways, in comes the taller one, and she can't move. So she makes a phone call and she contacts my mentor and explains to him what she has going on. And he says, you know, the only way to test it, he goes, is if it happens again. He goes, next time you see something like that, he goes, say Jesus' name. If you're able to say his name and these things react, then you know it's not an ET. He goes, if you say the name and they don't react, then you know it's an ET. So she thanked him and she hung up the phone, and sure enough, next night, 3 o'clock in the morning, same thing happens. After a few minutes, she was able to actually scream Jesus' name. She said when that happened, because she had contacted him afterwards, she said when that happened, the taller one looked at the 6 smaller ones and they all hissed at each other, hissed at her, and took off through the bedroom wall, and she never saw them again.
Holy wow.
So one of the things that we often wonder about is, you're familiar with demonology, is the great masquerade.
Right.
You think about it, demons can take the form of anything that they want. In this case, they took advantage of the whole gray alien and masquerading as gray aliens because they knew that she was into that. So they used that.
Well, it's either that or they look surprisingly similar.
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to aliens, I think it's like anything else. I think there are good ones and there are bad ones. And I don't think, well, let me rephrase that. I think like with any species, I think there are good and bad within the species. That's what I meant to say. In other words, like we hear that reptilians are evil. And their politics and their hierarchy and maybe their nature, I don't know. But I think there could be good ones too. Just like we hear the Pleiadians are good. Well, there's probably some nasty Pleiadians as well,
But interestingly, Pleiadians are the ones that everybody who feels like they're part alien believes they're Pleiadians.
Yeah, they're loving
because
light.
they're the good. Yeah, because they're the good guys in our lore, right?
Right. So, and I think it's like with any species, there's probably, it's probably variable.
Right. And then, another thing that we talked about, another things that demons could use to their advantage are topas, thought forms. Like a good example, what happened with that case where those 2 girls tried to murder that one girl up here, the Slender Man.
With the Slender Man, yes.
That one. That's a very good possibility. That could have either been a topa, that they gave something energy, or it could have been something demonic masquerading as
a topa.
Yeah. Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Like if somebody wants something bad enough or, wants to have that encounter experience, who's to say something demonic can't come along and say, oh, right. You want a Slender Man? I'll be your Slender Man.
Right.
And next thing you know, people are having experiences.
Yeah, I mean, because there you are in the woods, and there's your guy that you've been, basically worshiping, who doesn't, who's new, right? There's no history of this, per se. So, right. And just for the record, I wasn't mocking everyone who thinks they're Pleiadians. Okay.
Oh, right. No,
I just thought that might have sounded like I was being there, but that is who everyone wants to be when they're convinced that they are, part alien.
Yeah.
Or
the reason I brought that up was to make the point that that some of these aliens we come across, I think species also have theology. For example, in other words, if there are the Greys show up, okay, they say Greys are like half robot, half or AI, I should say. They're
well, yeah, I keep hearing
clones.
clones.
By the reptilians, and yeah. They're there to serve them, and that kind of thing. However, any kind of gray alien, right? Because there's different kinds and stuff. Just something with the big head and the eyes, and if they are alien and not demonic, I'm assuming that they are in a league with the demonic because they're doing things that are evil, like invading you in your privacy, in your sanctuary, emotionally, spiritually, physically. You didn't ask for it. It wasn't. Yeah. Well, I don't know. They say that the invitation is a big thing um, with a lot of this stuff. And I think invitation is certainly, might be a factor in some of this, the demonic stuff. But like as far as people getting abducted outright by aliens, who's to say? But either way, I mean, they might as well be demons because they're certainly acting like it, you know. And then of course, the trauma is still trauma, experienced physically in the body, in your body. So that's got to be dealt with too, and that's where the psychotherapists and the psychologists and stuff come in.
Well, absolutely, because it gives PTSD a whole new meaning, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Definitely.
I mean, whether or not somebody or everybody believes somebody had an experience, if that person believes they have the experience, and it's upsetting them to the point where, they're looking for help, with it, because they're struggling so bad, then yeah.
and the worst part I think with that is that if you've encountered something that for humans generally creates PTSD, it's, when you're experiencing it generally and diagnosed with it, generally it's not happening to you anymore. And what I have found with most of the abduction cases that I have heard is that they're not a one and done, as a rule. Do you find that to be true in your research as well?
They're not. I think that, with the abduction phenomenon itself, it seems to be less now than it was in years past. Is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm asking if an abductee, an experiencer of an abduction, isn't it a repetitive experience as a rule?
Yeah. It would be more than once. It would be every so often. It would be there's family members. A lot of times and that's something else that's very similar, right? You talk about generational curses, right?
Right.
And then you find out that these things are focusing on generational lineage. Is it the blood type they're interested in? Is it this? Is it the DNA of that? Nobody knows why they pick certain people and don't pick other certain people.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely.
And usually when you get people that are repeatedly abducted, one of the things that we've known, and I'm sure everybody's aware of, were the chips that people have come out and talked about, saying that they've had chips in them. I mean, wasn't there someone that we knew,
a doctor
that would remove chips from abductees? You know who I'm talking about?
Right.
I can't remember his name.
I can't remember.
Well, there are a few that will try that, but from what I've heard from people who have witnessed those surgeries, those implants tend to run.
Yeah, they move around.
Yeah. And to me, that's a piece of AI that's been implanted, for whatever purpose.
Especially when it has its own frequency coming off of it.
Yes. It's unfrequency. Whitley Strieber has one in his ear.
Yeah, and
that struck me as odd too.
The frequencies can be measured, and then when they pull them out of the body, it shuts off.
Yes.
It's like loses its power supply.
Right.
And they say that the way the tissue kind of bonds with it is really interesting as well, because under normal circumstances, it would be just a piece of metal, which is invasive. So the body's response would be to form pus around it.
And eject it.
To eject it. And in this case, that's not happening. There's like this weird, I don't want to say fatty tissue, but it's I'm not a doctor, okay? But some kind of tissue that kind of like sticks to the implant. almost, like a bunch of like I don't know, kind of like I don't want to say webbing, but there's and then so it doesn't get pussy, it doesn't get infected, and it could stay there indefinitely.
Yes. I find
And
that astounding.
right, and uh, yeah, that's pretty amazing stuff. That's when people have stuff like that, that's physical evidence right there.
That is physical evidence.
You
And
know,
it's
I heard
incontrovertible
yes,
because we
yes,
don't have that technology. Because if we did, you wouldn't have to use anti-rejection medications when you did implants, like, transplants.
right.
You could figure out a way to be able to do that. So it's obviously not something that we have, right?
Right. Well, not that we have in our mainstream.
Well, true. That's a big sentence. Not that we have in our mainstream. Just like we don't have the right propulsion systems to get us to the stars without throwing a lot more money at it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think of the whole Space Force?
What do I think of the Space Force? I think we already have one.
Yes, I agree.
And, I've been just on a tear around all these conferences this year, and I got to hear Corey Good speak. And are y'all familiar with him and what his statements are, that he is part of that and that there already exists a program like that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We just had on William Whitecrow was another one that worked with the secret space program back in the day. We had him on not even 2 years ago. He died last year, but he was out talking about the same thing, the same stuff. Like, hey man, this is real. This has been going on for a long time, and you wouldn't believe how far advanced they are in this
Right.
stuff. We already got people on Mars. This is going on, that's going on, so the Space Force thing is just really like, if you are really into ufology, you know that the space is a busy place. There's a lot of stuff going on out there, both nuts and bolts and supernatural.
Yes.
So it's busy, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot more going on. There's the moon alone. I mean, you could do a whole show on how anomalous the moon is, and
Yes.
why we haven't been back, quote unquote,
And the structures.
Yeah,
And I'm going to tell you that I got to listen to a lecture by somebody who really spends his life researching these things and writes about them and does things like that. And he showed things from the moon's structures, like a skyline along the edges and such. And I was like, get out of town. I have never seen that in my life. I am old, right? And so I was just stunned that I've never heard anybody except this summer, as I'm getting exposed to more, discuss this. And yeah, I'm sitting here doing the talk, and this interview is about you. We've got a minute till the top of the hour. This is not about me. But it's fascinating because I love these conversations.
Oh, right. There's so much we could talk
Right.
about.
Each topic you could sit there and marathon
Oh,
because there's so much going on with all these topics.
Don't think we're not going to folklore and theology and mythology, because I'm a Joseph Campbell fan. So I love folklore and mythology. And
When
I know
I
y'all
was-
know it.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I know that y'all know that. So
Oh,
I'm
right,
looking
yeah.
forward to this second hour, because and the forbidden archaeology. I want to hear that from you too, because y'all just have such a vast vault in your mind, each of you.
With the work that we do, you have to.
Yes, you do. And we're taking a 5-minute break. We'll be back in roughly 5 minutes. But